It's very good to see the familiar faces as well as the new ones, but it's very good for you to be with me. For I mightn't be here that long, and the more that you are with me, the more that you can receive my love of the Most High, the most creative, the most glorious, which is the intelligence behind the scenes, that which is behind your body, behind all the cricket field, the trees, behind the sky, is this most creative, extraordinary intelligence, which is really your own intelligence. But we can't start there. We can't start by saying, I am intelligence. We have to demonstrate that to ourselves by what I want to talk about is pure intellect. Now, the spiritual life has to engage something that's real in us. It has to be, if we're searching for something or we're trying to reach something, it has to be our own pure intellect. And the only thing that stops us from being this pure intellect is our restless mind and emotions. For the pure intellect is absolutely still, just as the Most High, the most wondrous, the creator and intelligence behind the scenes, behind it all, is absolutely still. It is only on earth, amongst men and women, that there is movement of the mind and emotions which clouds over what each one of us actually is. Pure intellect, pure stillness, without any need of the mind, except in the ordinary circumstances of life, to remember where we've left something, to put two and two together and get the answer. That's what the mind is for. It is certainly not for going into your feelings, your emotions. For as soon as you go into your feelings and emotions, that is, you try to work out what's wrong, you go into this dreadful, complicated world of mind, and you are so far from the Creator and the beginning that you really despair. Whereas you should not despair. So I want to talk about the way back to the pure intellect. And I'm not just using words, because all of you at some time or other has been engaged in meditation. I don't teach meditation now, but I certainly did years ago, because it is part of the process of getting stiller, or it's supposed to be. Meditation is to use something which comes from the stillness of the intelligence, to use that, to continue to shine that on the movements of the mind, or the movements of the emotions, or the movements of the body. And I'm talking about bodily movements due to emotions, because it is the emotions that usually control most of our body movements and actions. So in meditation, you have to use something which is a higher intelligence than the usual thinking, choosing and wanting mind. Now you've all done that. So you've used a relatively higher intelligence than your normal restless mind. And although this can be part of the mind at that stage, it's still a relatively purer part of the mind that meditates and keeps watching without joining the movement. Because we all know if we close our eyes that the mind will start to think. The mind, powered by the emotions, will start to think and move on aimlessly. And the idea of meditation is to watch still, watching still, so that the mind cannot move. If the intelligence can watch the movement, any movement, it has to stop. And as we learn meditation or practice meditation and get stiller and stiller, so we get a relatively more intelligent and we get a relatively more focused power to stop movement, to be able to focus on something and not allow the mind to move. That, of course, is what we finally have to do, or the aim of meditation is. And one of the things of being with me is that your restless mind and emotions start to stop. It's a rather beautiful thing, because when the restless mind and emotions start to stop, you get a sense of peace, of stillness. That's a sort of peace beyond understanding of peace, because understanding of peace is of the mind, whereas this is real. Now, the power that you use in meditation to stop this aimless, stupid, insane thought process comes from more and more being the pure intellect. For the pure intellect is behind the mind, and it's always there, always still, always perfect, always there. And the human mind, from the time we are a child, and even before, the human mind starts to move in its responses to the environment, to the sensory responses. It starts to identify that. We could even say mum, 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 dad, dad, dad. Now that's the beginning of the human mind. So sooner or later, there's going to be another reference to mum, 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 I want some food, food, food. And there's going to be a restlessness and a crying, because it comes from the mind and the body's needs. And they're all restless. But the body's needs are okay as long as we don't allow our mind to attach to them. Such as, if I am desperately thirsty, which is a body need to have water or liquid, if I allow my mind to get hold of that need and start to say, oh, I'm so thirsty, oh, I wish I had some water, oh, wouldn't it be lovely to have a drink of water, and to start thinking about water, you'll notice what happens. You don't just have the bodily need of water or liquid, you have this intermediate thing, this judgmental thing, this interpretive thing, the mind working. So what should be a pure action of the need of the body, which you can register in your own intelligence, gets this supernumerary, this what is called the self, which takes over and wishes and wants and moves. And so what was still, that is, the need perhaps to die of thirst, stilly, without wanting and without trying, disappears. And I lose my equilibrium through the mind attaching itself to this physical need, and makes it much worse, makes me emotional, and therefore my mind gets in front of my pure intellect, which is quite capable of dying. My pure intellect in my body is quite capable of dying now. And although the body might move, in certain cases of failure of the breathing or failure of something, the body might writhe. It's not necessary to get identified with it. The thing is to be, as much as possible, the stillness behind, because the pure intellect is behind death, behind the body. The thing is to not allow the mind to identify with the body's needs. Otherwise, you'll get movement in front of the pure intellect and you will solve nothing. Nothing will be solved. You only think it will. So what you use in meditation to still the mind and the emotions which want to make the body move is a relative intelligence that comes from the pure intellect. Only relative so far. Because as I still my mind and my emotions, I become more intelligent and I have more access to this extraordinary power, which is the only power you have in your body, the power of stillness. Stillness is power. Power over what? Power over myself, power over my mind, power over my emotions, power over my worry, because the mind can't help but worry. It's like the newspapers. The mind's always got a problem, always got something to worry about. Like the media's always got something to worry the people about. The murders, the mayhems, the rapes, the voting situation, everything to make the mind work and identify with the environment and man's making of the environment, his environment, and so we lose our stillness until we are able to be absolutely still, which is not that difficult. It only requires us to give up the constant feeding of the mind and emotions. You know, eventually, if you don't feed the mind and emotions, they're going to die. They're going to pass out. They're just going to disappear. That's what's going to happen to them, like anything that you don't feed. But we feed, and we are being taught by our environment every day more and more to feed our emotions and to feed our mind. And so it's so difficult today to reach the state of pure intellect. And yet it's so simple. Because if I stop feeding my mind and emotions in ways that we'll be talking about, I don't lose my mind. It's still there. But it's there as an instrument for me to use. It's not there as an instrument using me for its aimless thoughts, its stupid worrying, its wanting, and its trying. That's how it uses us. So when I am able to still my mind and emotions, I still have them there. I still have them there. In a very difficult situation, when the mind is still, there can still be a sense of vibration in the stomach, of a vibration of a sort of disturbance, but it's not a disturbance because the mind is the only thing that disturbs me, the mind and emotions, but it's in the body. And it can be there in an excessive situation, an extreme situation. But that's all right because it's there. It's not up here, you see. It's not driving my mind. It's there. Always in the stomach, you'll notice. And that's all right. Then you deal with the situation and gradually everything becomes normal again, equilibrium. So you don't lose contact with this registration of the environment and the interaction with people and things. You don't lose that. But you do lose the interpretation of it. And the interpretation is due to the mind and emotions. So this pure intellect is all you have, really. And all of you are using it more or less, and have used it, to be stiller and stiller, and to find a new way of living, which is not dependent so much on the mind and emotions. All of you have done that. But can you do more? Are you feeding the mind now and emotions? Are you thinking about the future? Are you worried about the future? Because if you're worried about the future, then you're feeding your emotions, and that, of course, feeds your mind, because your emotions are the powerhouse of the field of the mind. The emotions drive the mind. As you've noticed, you get in an emotional situation, what happens? The mind won't stop thinking about it, will it? You've got the emotions down there, you've got a tightness, something in your stomach, and then whenever you close your eyes or you sit still, the mind tries to draw your attention to this pain and for you to interpret it. The mind wants to interpret the pain and say, what is this pain due to? Now let me tell you what pain is to me. Emotional pain we're talking about. Emotional pain is the same as any other pain in its way. It's an emotional pain. It's sufficient that it's there. Why do you have to know what's making you emotional? Why do you have to go into it? For God's sake, isn't it enough that it's there? Why? It is the mind that wants to go into it. And as soon as you start to go into your emotional pain with your mind, you're trapped. You go into this place of feelings, which is the place of the emotions, is in the stomach in the first instance. And as soon as you think that it's good therapy to go in there and find out what it is that's causing this pain, you're fooling yourself and you're interpreting it, and you're adding to the power of your emotions in your mind. Because I say that you know in the honesty of your own knowledge, you know what's causing the emotional pain. It's no good telling me that you don't know what it is. Because in most cases, you do know what it is, but you don't want to face it. It means your partner doesn't love you enough, or you don't love him enough, or her enough. And this is a background situation. You have a knowledge of that. You suspect it, but you're frightened, terrified of it. So, you say, I don't know what's causing this pain. But if you're still, and if you can look at your life with stillness, with the pure intellect, as much as you have it, you will see what is causing it without having to go to a therapist. That's if you're honest. For the other percentage of pain, that's emotional pain that might rise in us, isn't it sufficient that you have emotional pain in you? Isn't that sufficient? Why do you want to know where it comes from? Why do you want to know where it comes from? It might come from the terrible plight of someone who is suffering somewhere in the world because the psyche transmits everything. It might come from there. that somebody's suffering terribly, which you would never even know about in the psyche. It might come from there. Who knows? Without trying to personalize it, which we try to personalize everything, selfishly personalize everything, we make everything personal. You don't know where it comes from, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. The fact is that it's there. Now, what can we do about it? We can use the only power that we have. Now, there's two things that you have, remember. You have the mind, which is force and forceful, and you have the power, which is the relativity of the pure intellect as far as you have realized it. That's the power. So if you use your mind, you're going to contribute to the pain in your stomach, try and work it out, get into your emotions, and you're going to go deeper and deeper into depression and confusion. But if you use the power of the stillness that you have achieved, my goodness, many of you have been with me for years, and all of you have made progress in the process. All of you, without exception. There's no going back except in a phase where you have to appear to go back, but you never go back. Everything contributes to your stillness. Every day, every moment contributes by the way of the Most High, the Creator, the great intelligence, contributes somehow or other to the opportunity for you to become more still. So when you have the pain of emotion in you and you don't try to find out what it is, because you probably already know what the cause of it is. But anything else that's in there that you can't identify because your mind is not straight enough yet, then you use this power of pure vigilance, like you're looking at the speaker now. That's the power of intelligence. That is the power of intelligence that's looking at the speaker now. There's no movement of the mind, no interpretation. You're purely listening and receiving with your knowledge. You don't have to think, because if you think, you'll break this wonderful interaction between the two of us. It needs no thought, no interpretation, what I'm saying, because you already know what I'm saying. The mind only thinks because it doesn't know anything. It's always doubtful. And if it ever knows anything, it soon discovers it needs to know some more. But what you're listening with is this pure intelligence that's looking out of your eyes and out of your ears. Has no thought in it, no movement in it, and that's your power. Then you look at this emotion, if you were to have it in your stomach. You look at it. Just like you're looking at the speaker. Only one's external and the other is inner. There it is. Now when I look into supposing where my stomach is, and I'm sure if you look in there now, many of you will find the same thing, I have nothing arising. The washing machine is not working. The churning, the going over is absent. I'm absolutely still. Apart from, if I want it, I can register sensation. If my intelligence wanted to register sensation, which is a natural thing of the physical body, then I can come and register that. So can you. Sensation. But then the thing is to see through the sensation, to get still enough to see through the sensation and just see nothing arising. In other words, I have no problem in my life. How about that? That's you. Now, what we've been talking about is the light of consciousness. And the light of consciousness comes from the pure intellect. The pure intellect is not really, as far as we're concerned, in existence except inside of us. But the reflective power of it, which is available to us, is called consciousness. And you've probably all seen the imaginative Eastern Indian, particularly Hindu, pictures of the master or something on the top of the world with this light coming out of him like that. Or this so-called third eye and its light coming out there. Well, they're imaginative and fantastic images of what I'm talking about. Is the light of consciousness, which has no place in your body, only has a place if you believe in the complicating systems that put things in a place in the body, such as those very confusing things called the chakras, the third eye. Is there any end to that stuff? Because the truth is that there's no truth in any of it. There's just the light of consciousness, and you are well aware of that, because it's the light of stillness in you. It's all you've got. The rest you've picked up, you've got as conditioning, as teaching, as concepts. It's not the truth. What you've got is the power. And the only opposition to the power is the past. Because as I say, there's only the present, and consciousness is in the present, just as you're listening now and looking out of your eyes now. That's consciousness. See, so it's very, very close to you. It enables you to see. It enables you to hear. But if you're disturbed in the emotions, which means disturbed in the mind, you can't see straight, you can't hear straight, because there's a churning of the past going on, distracting your actual listening and your seeing. So you see how close consciousness is to you. It's there now. We don't have to make any excuses. We don't have to draw any third eyes. It's there now. It's right through your body. Whatever your body is, we don't know what the body is. Once you're out of the mirror, you don't know what your body is. It's just a seeming place, this consciousness that's available to you. And so the light of consciousness is what we bring to bear on the past. Now, it's no good trying to bring it to bear really on the thought process, to try to stop thinking. It's all very well to try to stop thinking, but you can't try to stop thinking. That is aimless and aimless thought, which all our minds go on with until they don't. It's no good really trying to stop thinking. The thing is to quieten the emotions, because emotions are the force behind all thought. As I've said, in your own experience, when you're emotional, the thought races to try to find solutions, to try to work it out. That comes from your emotions. So if you want to stop thinking or diminish thinking, you have to quell the emotions, the churning of the emotions, and that is done by the light of consciousness, which is what's looking out at the speaker now. So where does the ignorance appear in me? It appears in the stomach first. All emotion appears in the stomach. Now, isn't that a godsend to be able to know where emotion exists, first of all, in the stomach? No mistake about that. If you're emotional, you have to have a look at your stomach and you'll see that's churning, that's tight, that's heavy, that's something that you can identify or register as something not very good or that you don't really want there because it's tension. Now, that emotion, when it comes up in your stomach, of course, it's not always there because it comes up from the deep subconscious, deep inside the body. All our pains and hurts of yesterday, they're not always there, manifested in the body here. They're deep down in the subconscious where they're not available to us to register. So it seems as though everything's all right. Then as soon as we hit a difficult or emotional situation, it triggers the emotions in the subconscious and up they come and we get it in the stomach. Now, if we don't contain it in the stomach, which you do by the light of consciousness, the power of the Eastern Third Eye, the power of the great light of God that you see on the front of their magazines and things. No more bullshit, please. It is your own consciousness that you are looking at the speaker now with and listening to the speaker without anything inside of you apart from that purity. You can put that into the stomach area. If you have an emotion, you can put that consciousness on it. Very simply. You see, it's an inner power. And it's utterly available to you. Your sense of sight and your sense of hearing are external. And the consciousness is in those. But the real consciousness, the power of the consciousness, is within. And you can put it on any emotion at any time. And that emotion will appear in your stomach first. And then you put the consciousness on it. Now that's your God-given power. The spiritual life. What is the spiritual life about? Saying mantras, for God's sake. There's no stillness in mantras. It just hypnotizes the mind, and the mind goes into a sort of an hypnotic state. And you call it peace or something. But you're not conscious. The whole thing is about being conscious and having the power of consciousness. And it's very simple. Now, if you are not registering in the first instance the emotion in your stomach, it is then likely to creep up into the chest. And you get a band across the chest. And you might get a band across the chest every morning or every second morning. Or whenever you phone up your mother or something, you get a band across the chest. Now that should not be up in your chest. It means that you're not working properly. You should be working to get that band of tightness in the chest down to the stomach. You do that by surrender. Are you listening to me? Are you hearing me, please? Because this is not bullshit. This is reality I'm talking about in existence. How we do it. How it can be done without any wishing and wanting. So it is not good to have a band across the chest. It's better to have that, to make it let go, that it's got nothing to hold on to. Because I give up. I'm not going to hang on to identify with my tension, which keeps the band there, the band of ignorance, the band of emotion. It can only stay there if I identify with it and hold on to my chest or my body like this subconsciously. So what I have to learn to do is to give up. Now, this moment, particularly when you're having the argument. Are you hearing me, please? There's no good giving up 5 minutes after you've had the argument. That's not how it's done. That's delusion. You give up the argument at the time of the argument with another. You give it up. Then you don't make this emotion, you don't give it the power to continue to rise, because if you allow it to continue to rise, it'll go up to your throat. You won't be able to talk so well because of the emotion in your throat, and then it'll go up into your brain. And then you won't be able to stop thinking, do you? So the true way, the real way for us people in existence, is to get that emotion down to where it's supposed to be, in the stomach. And to put the light of consciousness, which you have, which you're looking at the speaker with now, just so that we know what it is. It's got nothing in it. You could call it intelligence if you liked. But what is it? You don't know. But it is enabling you to see and to hear. And that's an outer use of it. The senses use the consciousness, which comes from the pure intellect, of course.